Guys, every seat's good except for the one in the back on this side is broken, so we'll try to stay away from that one.
Which one was you said one was that's the broken one?
Is there? I thought we only had 30. I got. Guys, I'm sorry, but that's the only seat that I'm gonna have is the broken one.
Oh yeah, that's okay. We don't get it.
All right, thanks.
That's actually my family. I thought that seat was off limits. I can just sit behind them.
Oh, you sure?
Because he wants to sit behind him.
Yeah.
Just let me tell you, if there's a big wake boats out there and they go by and you see the big waves, Mama, pick your purse up because sometimes we have water coming to the front of the boat. Okay? All right. Hey, good afternoon. Can everybody hear me? All right, fantastic. My name's Captain Rick. It's going to be my pleasure to spend the next hour with you guys and share some of the beauty and the history of Grand Lake. How does that sound? All right, that's what I like. Now, this is a 1-hour narrated tour. However, don't worry, I won't be yakking the whole time. If you have any questions, feel free to ask, and if I don't know the answer, I'll make something up, okay? All right, perfect. All right, let me... All right. All right, guys. All right, folks, as we pull away from the dock, I'd like to bring your attention to the brown building with the white trim up there in front of us, and that is the Ezra Kaufman House. Ezra Kaufman moved here in 1877. He was looking for gold and silver. Unfortunately, the gold and silver ran out very quickly here in Grand Lake. So he became a hunting and a trapping guide for a short time. He didn't care much for that. So his family talked him into opening up the first bed and breakfast here in Grand Lake. That's where he opened it up, and they opened it in 1892. So you got to imagine that was the only place on that side of the lake right now. So it had to be the most glorious place to stay. Now, unfortunately, Ezra passed away in 1920. His family did keep it in operation until 1946. At that time, it closed down and stayed empty until 1970. That's when the Grand Lake Historical Society purchased it and turned it into the museum that it is today. Over here on the left, we have our public beach. Anybody who comes to Grand Lake has access to our public beach. That is a man-made beach. However, we do have 3 natural sandy beaches here in Grand Lake, and I'll show you each and every one as we go past them today. And the brown building with the white trim right there is the Grand Lake Yacht Club. The Grand Lake Yacht Club is the highest registered altitude yacht club in the world. It was formed in 1902 by some Denver businessmen, and they built that building in 1912. Every August, they have a regatta here. If you win your class in the regatta, your name goes on a silver cup trophy that's in there. That silver cup trophy was donated by Sir Thomas Lipton. Sir Thomas Lipton was an avid sailor, but he had never been to Grand Lake. He just thought it'd be really cool to have his name on a trophy. That's why he donated it. And it's still in there today. And Sir Thomas Lipton is from the Lipton Tea Company family. And this next building to the left is my competition. We won't talk about them. And to the left is the first of our natural sandy beaches, and that is at the Lemon Lodge. If you stay at the Lemon Lodge or one of their cabins, you have access to their private beach. Another nice thing about the Lemon Lodge is they have boat slips if you bring your boat. That's quite the commodity right now, because between the 3 lakes, Lake Granby, Shadow Mountain Lake, and Grand Lake, there's over 200 people on a waiting list trying to find a boat slip. Now, right after this pontoon boat right here is the mouth of the Tanohutu River. Tanohutu translates in native tongue to Big Meadow, and that's where that river forms, is up in the Big Meadow in the Rocky Mountain National Park. It is one of the two rivers that flows into Grand Lake, forming the headwaters of the Colorado River. If you'd like a better view of the town of Hootoo, the Rapids Restaurant and Lodge is right up there. You can sit right on the riverside, enjoy lunch, dinner, or a cocktail. And this first home over here on the left, if I could bring your attention to the exterior building materials of that home, that is called Rocky Mountain Rustic. And the beauty of that is each one of those slats are independent of each other. So if you were to have any damage to your home, perhaps from a lightning strike or a big bull moose rubbing his antlers on the side of your house, in Kremling there is a sawmill that'll cut you whatever you need. You tell them the length and the width and any angles. They'll cut it for you, remove the damaged pieces and nail up the new pieces. Nobody will even know you had any damage. So right now in front of the boat, we're looking at 3 different homes. One on the lake shore, one in the middle, and one on top of the hill. The one in the middle belongs to a husband and wife. They are from Boulder, and they were both gynecologists. They built that home, and they quickly realized that it wasn't large enough for their family, which consists of 8 children and 32 grandchildren. So they had to build a guest house. That's right, that home right in front of us on the lake shore is their guest house. If you're curious to what size guest house you need for 8 children and 32 grandchildren, it's that one right there. And the home up on top of the hill is the former summer home of Tim Allen, the actor. Tim the Toy Cabin's right there.
That's Tim Allen's home up on the hill there.
So over to the left, you see that massive staircase right there. We call that the Grand Lake Stair, top to the bottom. Any guesses?
300.
Cut that in half. 152. So 150 is a good guess. I recommend if you want to go for a boat ride, you don't forget your keys. And to the right of that, you see that tram system right there. That gentleman is a quadriplegic. He puts his wheelchair in that brown cage up there at the top and rides down to his boathouse. Took him 11 years to get permission to build that from the town and the county because they thought it was going to create sparks to become a potential fire hazard. But after 11 years of compromise on both sides, they allowed him to build it, and now he can enjoy the lake like everybody else. In this next boathouse with the 4 square green doors, if you look directly above it, you will see a pre-existing chimney and part of a foundation of a home that used to sit up there. It was a rather large home. It would sleep up to 40 people, and it went from that chimney all the way to the other end of that house that's up there now. Unfortunately, back in 1960, it was struck by lightning. It burned to the ground, and that family did not wish to rebuild it to its former glory, so they built the home that's up there now. If you look at the boathouse that's below that home, if you look at the roof line, it appears to be arched. That is an optical illusion. That roof line is perfectly flat. And this next home with the arched windows, if they didn't have their blinds down, we could look inside, and above their glass bar, they have a caribou head hanging on the wall. Well, we call that home the Smoking Caribou because on the other side of the wall where that's hanging was the smoking room for the gentlemen back in the day. Well, they ran 2 pipes from the nostrils of that caribou head back into the smoking room. When newcomers would come, they'd light up a pipe or a cigar, blow smoke through those pipes, they'd come out the nostrils of the caribou head, kind of startling the newcomers a little bit. Now, although that home does not look that large, when we get past it a little bit, look at the back side and you'll see almost like a tunnel that goes back to the hillside. And there are 7 bedrooms in that house. And the next home with the flat roof up there, that was built in the early 1920s as a lodge by a rather prominent Denver family. You might have heard of them before, the Adolph Kors family. So you could rent a room from them, sit up on that deck, enjoy a frosty cold beverage, and look out over the mountains and the lake. They did sell it in the late 1960s, and now it's a private residence. So right now in front of the boat on the other shoreline, you'll see 2 orangish, reddish roofed buildings. There's a boathouse and there's a home over there. It's kind of hard for you guys in the back to see, but if you draw a line from those 2 buildings right there to the top of Shadow Mountain, you'll see a roof line or the outline of a little building up there. That is an old Park Ranger fire lookout station. This guy might bring some waves into the boat. Maybe I can turn us. So that is a old abandoned Park Ranger fire lookout station. A park ranger would go up there for 3 weeks all by himself, and he'd look for smoke or fire, either from careless campers or from lightning strikes. At the end of his 3 weeks, another park ranger would come up there with a pack mule carrying all of his clean clothes and food and supplies that he needed for 3 weeks. And whoever he was relieving would bring the pack mule back down again. Now you can still hike up there if you choose to. It's a rather intensive hike, and it's straight up the top of that ridge. It's 9.5 miles round trip with an elevation change of 1,150 feet. So it's a pretty heavy duty hike. We recommend, if you are going to make it, to start off early in the morning so you don't get stuck up there in case a thunderstorm pops up in the afternoon. Now they do call that Shadow Mountain because all of those homes in front of us to the right and the left will not receive any sunlight for 5 months out of the winter. Therefore, they are summertime homes only. They don't even plow the road that goes behind there. Another nickname for Shadow Mountain is Echo Mountain, because if you look to the left side of the boat, you'll see we're sitting in a big bowl right here at this end of the lake. When we have our fireworks or there's a thunderstorm, it echoes very, very well down there at the east end of the lake, therefore the nickname Echo Mountain. If anybody is curious, the surface water temperature right now is 64.8 degrees. We never did reach 70 degrees at all this summer, so now it's on its way back down again. And there is 270 feet of water between the bottom of the boat and the bottom of the lake right now, so don't drop anything. Now right now in front of the boat we're looking at 3 different mountains. Does anybody know what the mountain in the middle is called?
Never summer.
Mount Baldy is its nickname, correct, but what's its real name?
No, that's
Mount Craig is its real name. Not too many people know that. Everybody calls it Mount Baldy. Because if you look up there, it is above 12,000 feet. It is above tree line. No trees grow up there. It kind of looks like the balding head of a gentleman. Therefore the nickname. Now to the right of Mount Baldy is Mount Westcott. Mr. Westcott was the first white original settler that ever came to Grand Lake. So he got to name a mountain after himself, and that's the one that he picked. Mr. Westcott was never a judge or an attorney, but he liked to be called Judge Westcott. So he introduced himself to everybody that way, and since he was the first one here, nobody else knew the difference, so that's what they all called him. And to the left of Mount Baldy is Mount Cairns. The Cairns are another original white settler family that moved here early on, and they built the first general store about halfway up that mountain. Now that seems like an unlikely place to put the general store, but that was way before the village was even here. They put it there because it was on the trail that the stagecoach would take from Denver to Grand Lake. The stagecoach would always stop at the general store. People would pick up whatever provisions or supplies that they needed and go off to a lodge or cabin they were staying at. They did move the general store in the late 1800s, the village you're familiar with now, and if you've ever been to Humphrey's gift shop, that's where they put the general store. Now right now in front of the boat we're looking at Mrs. Finch's Swiss Chalet looking home. Mrs. Finch usually leaves her boathouse door open for me to talk about her boat. She's very proud of her boat. If I owned it, I'd be proud of it too. It's a beautiful 1928 all mahogany Chris Craft boat. And it's a barrelback, so that makes it even more rare. Now every year here in July we have the Antique Wooden Boat Gathering. We get about 30 to 35 of those old wooden boats. Now, were you here for it?
No.
It's a great time to come. At the public boat dock, we have those boats, and they have a boat show there all morning. And then about 12:30, they do a parade, and they always let Mrs. Finch lead the parade around the lake. They do a nice slow lap so everybody can see their boats, and then they do a hot lap and get those old engines rumbling, and it sounds really good down at this end of the lake. It's one of my favorite days here in the summer. You can also see that Mrs. Finch is an excellent gardener with all of her plants blooming on her deck and her balcony. She is such an excellent gardener. If you came back in the middle of the winter, they'd still be blooming because they're all artificial. She doesn't like me talking about that as much as her boat, but those are the facts.
When is the boat show?
It's in July, usually like the third weekend. If you Google Grand Lake and Wood Boat Show, it'll probably pop up for next year. In that blue home right there, you can see that the living quarters are up above the boathouse. Well, back in 1970, somebody finally realized if you start your boats up down there and let them warm up for a while, all the carbon monoxide is going up into your living quarters, causing a potentially hazardous situation. So you're no longer allowed to build living quarters on top of your boathouse, but if you have them, they're grandfathered in and you can remodel them and carry on. Now, if we skip a few homes here and go to that large home with all the rocks around the bottom of it, in my opinion, that is a perfect example of what a Rocky Mountain lakefront home should look like. They use all the proper building materials with the river stone on the bottom, the large log timbers around the windows, and even some of our Rocky Mountain rustic in the peaks. And once we get past that home, you'll see the home that we call the R2-D2 home, because it kind of looks like the little robot from the Star Wars movies. If you look at the architecture on the right side of that home, it's different than the architecture on the left side. That's because the husband and the wife could not decide on how they wanted to build their home. So she designed half of it, he designed half of it, they squashed it together, now they live happily ever after. And you would think that dome up there was some kind of observatory. It is not. That's nothing more than the top of their spiral staircase that goes to their master bedroom. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't say master bedroom anymore. It's primary bedroom. And after this second boathouse, you see that large foundation going up right there, because there are no building lots left available in Grand Lake. It's not uncommon for somebody to purchase a lot with a home on it. If they don't like the home, they just knock it down and build another one. And that's what that family's doing there right now. This is their third summer of trying to accomplish that goal. because we have a very short building season here. The first year they knocked down the old building and dragged it off. Last year they did all the prep work and the site work. And then when it thawed out this spring, that's when they started pouring that foundation. And this next home, one of the largest on the lake at 7,400 square feet. Another beautiful example of what a Rocky Mountain lakefront home should look like. I could not tell you the value of that home, but I can just look at all that rock landscaping right there and tell you there's a pretty penny involved right there. But a unique feature of this home is all the wood on the inside, the outside, and the boathouse is all reclaimed lumber from other buildings as far away as Australia and Europe. The best example we can see from down here is the boathouse. It looks old and distressed, but that boathouse is only 13 years old. And this next home with all the steps leading down to the water, there's a for sale sign in front of that home. Does anybody want to guess what that home's listed for? Anybody? Don't be bashful. 3.5 is pretty close because it's 3.75 actually. So if that home is valued at $4 million, what do you think the one next to it up on the hill's worth? I'd probably have to win 2 Powerballs to move into that house. And on the other side of those big yellow buoys on the shoreline is the mouth of the Adams Tunnel. The Adams Tunnel goes directly underneath of that mountain, and the other end ends up in Estes Park in Mary's Reservoir. From Mary's Reservoir, it delivers water down to the Front Range of Denver. Now that tunnel is 14 miles long. Hey guys, if you're going to break the rules and go swimming, at least shut the motor off so you don't cut your foot off with the prop. My 3rd season with no accidents yet, so let's try to keep it that way.
What's the purpose of the buoys over there?
Okay, we never had those there until the fire came through. And then after fire came through, all the debris that was getting pulled into the lake from the 2 rivers was getting into the tunnel. And it was corrosive and just creating problems, so they put that up there. I would think they would take it down in a little bit, but so they did build that tunnel in the 1930s, and in the 1930s they did not have any GPS or laser surveying equipment. So what they did was they had a team that started off in Estes Park working this way, another team working that way. They would dig 10 feet into the mountain and they put a mirror down on the floor. If they saw sunlight in that mirror, they knew they were going straight. They'd dig another 10 feet, put the mirror down on the floor. They saw sunlight, they knew they were going straight. 9 years later, when they met in the middle, they were only a half an inch off from being perfectly lined up. So that's quite the engineering marvel for the 1930s. Now, because we can regulate the water level, we can regulate the water that goes through that tunnel, the water level of Grand Lake never changes in 6 inches in one direction or the other. Therefore, none of these homes ever worry about being flooded, and they don't require floating docks.
Is it against the rules to swing off of the pontoon? Is that
It's against our rental rules. You can swim, ski, whatever you want on your own private boat. Just on our rentals, we try to avoid any kind of hazards. Yeah, that too. So back over there in the corner on the left is our public boat ramp. Anybody can use that free of charge to put their boat in or out. However, your boat will be inspected, and what they're looking for are zebra mussels. Zebra mussels are an invasive species that attach themselves to your boat and your trailer. If they were to find their way into Grand Lake, they would wreak havoc on our ecosystem. So if they find any remnants on your boat or trailer, they will decontaminate them for free, and then you're allowed to put your boat into the lake. And to the left is our fireworks barge, the GLS Doris. 3 times out of the year, we load that up with fireworks and pull it out to the middle of the lake. We do it for the 4th of July, Buffalo Days, and Constitution Week. We also have fireworks on New Year's Eve, but the lake's frozen solid. We can't use the barge, and we just put all the fireworks on top of the snow and the ice. And we have 500 year-time residents who live here in Grand Lake, 2,500 in the summertime when people are using their summer homes and their condos. But when the 4th of July fireworks come, there can be up to 20 to 25,000 people in town. So if you did not secure lodging in the village for that evening, it can take you up to 2.5 to 3 hours in traffic to get out of town, because everybody wants to leave at the same time, and there's only one way in and one way out of Grand Lake. And the home to the left with the American flag flying, and I'd like to say God bless America, and if any veterans or active duty military on board, thank you for your service. But that home right there is the last home on this side of the lake that has any road access. All of those homes on the other side of the lake in front of us to the right and the left do not have any road access. When they were building those homes, they had to bring all the building materials over either on a big barge in the summertime or a sled in the winter. In the 1970s, there was a cement mixer on one of those barges coming over here to pour the foundation on one of these homes. One of our Fast and Furious Rocky Mountain thunderstorms popped up, got very windy and very turbulent, and it knocked that cement mixer off of that barge into the water. And it sits behind me in about 125 feet of water. It's still there because it wasn't worth salvaging. Now the reason that there is no road access over here is to the left of that geodome home over there to the left is the mouth of the Tonahutu River. Not the Tonahutu, I'm sorry, the East Inlet River. The East Inlet River is the second river that flows into Grand Lake, forming the headwaters of the Colorado River. And have any of you guys ever made the hike up to Adams Falls? Adams Falls hike? If you ever wondered where the water went from the falls, that's where it comes into the lake. If you haven't made that hike, I highly recommend it. It's a very short hike. The falls are beautiful, and if you go a little bit farther past the falls loop, you end up in a big meadow where the river runs through it. The mountains are all around it. I still think the wildflowers are blooming in there. And the second boathouse over there to the left, in the middle bay, you'll see a beautiful mahogany Chris-Craft, the Six Peaks. The Six Peaks has a 45 horsepower engine in it. I bring that to your attention because to the right, that great big pontoon boat there, that is what 95 years of boating technology has changed, from that little wooden boat to that big pontoon boat. And that pontoon boat has a 350 horsepower engine on it. Now right now in front of the boat, we're looking at Mrs. Henderson's treehouse. And if you can see it tucked up there in the trees, she likes it secluded and all up in there. She even has a couple of trees that go right through her decking. She is in her early 80s, and it's not uncommon to see her paddling her kayak across the lake either for lunch or to pick up some groceries. Now you see that big sign right there that says 1152 Jericho Road. 1152 Jericho Road? Well, how can that be? You just told us there's no road access over here. Well, if any of you folks are as old as I am and remember Paul Harvey, I'll tell you the rest of the story in a little while. Just remember 1152 Jericho Road. Now the home over to the left with the orange reddish roof. There's a team that comes in the beginning of the summer and they wash that home up, clean all the linens, make sure the cabinets are all full of food and the refrigerator and the freezer, make sure the boats are running properly. And then that family might come visit for 4 to 6 weeks out of the summer. That family is the Hall family from the Hallmark Greeting Card Company. So if you ever bought one of their cards or donated or watched their TV channel, you've donated to the maintenance of this home. They also have a home in Aspen, and they're remodeling that home in Aspen. When the contractor said, Mr. Hall, you're spending an awful lot of money remodeling this home, Mr. Hall responded, one Mother's Day will pay for the remodeling of this home. So you can remember that the next time you pay $5.99 for a piece of paper folded in half. Hey, right now I've got a little bit of time, and what I'd like to do is see if our junior captains would like to sit here, drive the boat, and get their picture taken. Want to drive the boat, buddy? No? Okay, that's all right if you don't want to. That's for children of all ages. If any of you guys want to sit here and drive the boat and get your picture taken. Now, right now in front of the boat, we are looking at the Arapahoe National Forest. The Arapahoe National Forest is finally starting to get green and pretty again. If you were on this boat last year looking up there, it was brown and black and ugly, and that was all from the East Troublesome Fire that came through here in October of 2020 on that fateful Thursday night. He changed it? Absolutely. Come here, buddy. It's okay. You can sit up there.
So, treehouse.
Uh-huh.
Does she live there in the wintertime?
No.
Yeah, just
No. She goes back to police, Oklahoma, I believe, in the wintertime. You want to sit up here and take a picture?
Can you smile?
All right. Thank you. Okay, so on that fateful Thursday night, I received a code red on my telephone that said voluntary evacuation at 7 p.m. At 7:40, I received another one. It said mandatory evacuation. The wind had kicked up so bad that the fire was devouring 1,000 acres an hour and moving this way right over those mountains. So they closed off the inbound lane of Highway 34. Everybody used both lanes to evacuate the town and the village. And it took us 3 days to find out if our cabins or homes were still here. So that was a little bit of some trying times. We did lose 100 outbuildings, 300 homes, and 2 people perished in the fire. Now, if you look back to the right side of the boat, you can see the burn scar and see how close it actually got to those homes right there. There was nothing humanly possible we could have done to stop the fire from taking those homes. All of a sudden, the wind shifted and it brought it back over that ridge. That's the only reason those homes are still there. And then we have the Never Summer Mountain Range right there. The Never Summer Mountains are part of the Rocky Mountain National Park. If you drive up and over Trail Ridge Road, you get a really good view of the Never Summer Mountains. And they call them the Never Summer Mountains because they will hold snow all year round up at the higher elevations. And then back to the Arapahoe National Forest. In the wintertime, we have 200 miles of groomed snowmobile trails up there. And that makes us the snowmobile capital of Colorado. Right now, they're all ATV trails, and there's quite a few campsites up there. Now, people ask me, does Grand Lake close up in the wintertime? And that's far from the truth. We have quite a few winter activities here. In December, we have our winter carnival. Then when the lake freezes over solid, we build a really nice skating rink right in front of the public beach. We have pond hockey tournaments, ice fishing tournaments, and non-sanctioned snowmobile races.
How thick does the ice get?
I've seen it get up to almost 3 feet thick. Yep, I've been digging. My auger for my ice fishing rig is 36 inches, and I've used up the whole auger to get through it.
Typically, what's the time frame where you can't get across here between boat and snowmobile?
Usually from the beginning in November. It'll start to freeze and then it won't be solid enough. Probably it's right around Christmas time. So back to the left side of the boat, in between those two flagpoles, you see that little cabin with the satellite dish on it on that big chunk of granite. That little cabin right there, everything to the right of it was built on later, but that little cabin right there was the first cabin ever built in Grand Lake, and it was built in the early 1860s. And he put it on that big chunk of granite, which is a great idea because it's never going to move or never going to. And the boathouse to the left with the two open doors. If you look behind that, you will see either the beginning or the end of Jericho Road, depending on who you ask. Mrs. Henderson will tell you that's the beginning of Jericho Road. That's where she parks her car and walks 1,152 steps back to her treehouse. Therefore, the address 1152 Jericho Road. That's the rest of the story. Paul Harvey, good day. Now, Jericho Road does run parallel right behind all of those homes right there. Jericho Road is so narrow and so steep in some locations. If you were to bump into one of your neighbors, either coming or going in the other direction, somebody would have to pull over or back up to a pullout area because it's not wide enough for two vehicles. Another adverse effect of it being so narrow and so steep is when they started building these homes here, the Grand Lake Fire Department informed these homeowners that we can't get a fire engine to your home. It's too narrow and too steep. If you were to have a fire, we can't help you out. Well, they didn't think too kindly on that, so they pulled together a bunch of money. Got a federal grant and they bought a fireboat for the Grand Lake Fire Department. It's got a water cannon on the front, great big pump on the back. Lieutenant Dan, the fire marshal, he lets me play with it a couple times in the summer, and it's the best water pistol I ever got a hold of. Now this home to the left, the 3-story with the red flowers on their deck, I like to bring that to people's attention because I love it when somebody incorporates some nature into their architecture, and those people wrap their spiral staircase around that big pine tree rather than chopping it down, which I think is very cool. If you look directly above it, you'll see a lot of pine trees that are dead and standing and a lot that have fallen. That's from the pine beetle kill that came through here about 10 to 12 years ago. That also created a whole lot of fuel for when the fire came through. Now people ask me, what do they do in the wintertime if there's a fire over here and the lake's frozen and they can't get the fireboat over here? Well, because nobody lives here in the wintertime, there's no chance of human error causing a fire. And there's very few lightning strikes here. So we have never had a fire on this side of the lake in the wintertime. Big ones? You catching some big ones? And this big tan home right here, although we have lots of different kinds of architecture on the lake, that one to me doesn't quite fit in. It kind of looks like an Arvada apartment complex. But if you're a big fan of balconies, that's the house for you because he's got more balconies than anybody else on the lake. And this next home's one of my favorites because this gentleman, he has all the water toys. He has his pontoon boat right there on the lift. Next to it in the boathouse is his ski boat. But the most unique feature is all the way at the right side of his house, he has a garage door and a driveway leading down into the water. That's where he keeps his fishing boat. It's on a trailer and it's hooked up to a winch. He backs it down into the water, goes fishing, comes back, puts it on the trailer, pushes a button, and the winch pulls it back up into the boathouse or back up into his garage. Very innovative. House on the lake. It is Sky Rock. It belongs to the home up on the hill, which is Sky View. If you look on both sides of that big window, there is a red light on the left and a green light on the right. Many people think that's up there for port and starboard, and that's part of it. But what those people used it for, before the COVID came around, if the green light was lit, they were having a party or an open house. Anybody on the lake could come over here and hang out with them. If the red light was lit, it was please respect our privacy. Well, when the COVID came around, you could invite perfect strangers over to your house, so we haven't seen either one of those lights lit for quite a few years now. Now, all of these boathouses that you see on Grand Lake are required by law to have a granite foundation. If you do not have natural granite underneath where you want to put your boathouse, you have to sink large slabs of granite to provide that foundation. So if you can remember what your granite countertops cost, just think about that expense. And you never get to see it.
Random question, do you know if that's turf or grass?
It's grass. Yep. Now in front of the boat, that home with the flat boathouse and the American flag on it right there, that home has quite a few unique features to it. Watch out for water in the front. Alright, not too bad. What I really like is that bridge that goes over from their dock to their shoreline. But right on the other side of that bridge, you see that little orange roof building. When we get up here a little bit farther, if you look inside that orange roof building, you'll see two wagon wheel windows. And those wagon wheels came off the original stagecoach that brought people from Denver to Grand Lake way back when. Now, it was a rather expensive trip, and it would take you 3 days and 2 nights to get to Grand Lake from Denver by stagecoach. The first day, you'd come up just about where I-70 is, spend the night in Empire. The next day, you'd come up and over Berthoud Pass. You'd spend the night in Tabernash. And on the third day, you'd end up here in Grand Lake. Then we have the Lincoln Log home sitting up there. We skip another home, and we end up at the home that we call, I only can call it the complex because it's huge. They have every kind of water toy there is over there. That used to be the Kickapoo Lodge. Private family bought it. They've been remodeling it for the past few years. They just finished last year. All the way from their artificial palm tree to their steam room barrel. That great big barrel over there is a steam room that you can sit in and look over the mountains and the lake. I don't know if they need another friend, but I'll volunteer if they do. Now, as you can see now, we have turned rather abruptly away from the shoreline, farther than we have been on the whole trip so far. And that's because it gets very shallow, very, very fast from here to the shoreline over there. About halfway from here to the shoreline, it's only about 2.5 feet deep. Now, the reason it gets so shallow, so fast over there, is if you look back to the right side of the boat to Mount Baldy. If you look on both sides of Mount Baldy, you can see those big open areas. Where about 30,000 years ago, there was 2 giant glaciers there. Those giant glaciers decided they were going to slide this way. When they slid this way, they carved out Grand Lake, forming the largest and the deepest natural lake in Colorado. They tell me the deepest spot's 303 feet deep. I've only found 270 so far, but that's pretty deep for a freshwater lake. That bridge is the bridge that goes over the canal that leads to Shadow Mountain Lake. You can access Shadow Mountain Lake and back again from that canal, but there's no way to get a boat from Lake Granby to Shadow Mountain Lake. The water does flow through, however, you cannot get a boat through it. It's not navigable by boat. And if you'd like to look at the canal or the beautiful homes on the canal, Point Park is right there to the right of that bridge. Point Park has some nice little pavilions in there and some grills if you want to barbecue or have a picnic. And then at Point Park also you see that pier, that dock that's right there. That's where Tim Allen married his current wife. A lot of people like to get married there or just get their picture taken there because it lines up perfectly with Mount Baldy. So you have Mount Baldy in the background of all your wedding pictures. And a couple other local residents that like to hang out there are Bruce the Moose and his family members. They like to eat the aspen leaves and the willows that are in there. A couple fun facts about Bruce the Moose and his family members are: a moose can swim the entire length of this lake. A moose can swim up to 2 miles. Also, they can dive down to 12 feet because they like to eat the algae off the rocks. It's one of their greatest sources of protein. So if you ever see them standing in a river or a stream, that's what they're doing, is eating the algae. They're not eating weeds, they're eating the algae off the rocks. And to the left of the boat a little bit, and up on top of the hill, you see those long brown roof buildings up there. That is the Grand Lake Lodge. Have any of you guys been to the Grand Lake Lodge? Well, if you have, you can probably back me up. It's the best view you're going to have of all of Grand Lake. The lodge itself is a beautiful building. It's over 100 years old. You got a lot of really neat taxidermy work in there, one of those big round fireplaces in the middle, and the restaurant has very good food too. So if you get the opportunity, it's only 5 minutes out of town. You can sit up on their big deck and enjoy a cocktail and enjoy the view. It's really a cool place. Now the fire got very, very close to the backside of the Grand Lake Lodge. Took 3 fire departments and the forestry department to keep the fire from getting the lodge, and they did it for 2 reasons. One, of course, was to save the historic beauty of the lodge itself. The other was they felt if it made it over that ridge, it would have came right down into the village and burned the village down. None of us would have any place to vacation right now, so we are glad that didn't happen. Another fun fact about the Grand Lake Lodge is they have 70 cabins up there. Those cabins were all purchased as kit cabins from the Sears and Roebuck catalog. Remember that? The Amazon of the day. You could buy anything from the Sears and Roebuck catalog. And to the left of the boat, there's a white flagpole with a Canadian flag flying, and just to the right of that is the third of our natural sandy beaches, and that is at the old Davenhaven Lodge, which is now a private residence. We have quite a few great restaurants here in Grand Lake. If you're looking for Mexican food, Charlie's is all the way at the end of Grand Avenue. They've got a big deck up there, and you can look out over the lake. And then Sagebrush has traditional barbecue, if that's what you're looking for. Rocky's has milkshakes and fries and burgers and wings. But my favorite, the most unique restaurant in town is the One Love Rum Kitchen. It's kind of got an island flair to it, a Jamaican theme. They've got great fish tacos and a great happy hour between 3 and 5 o'clock with all their boat drinks are half price. If you should end up at the One Love Rum Kitchen, you tell them Captain Rick sent you, and they might slide this pirate a shot of rum. You been there? Twice? Twice today? You must like it. Everybody who works there is 30 years old or younger, and they're a very enthusiastic bunch of young people. And their gazebo over there in front of us, that is actually a town park. Very possibly the smallest town park in existence. I don't know for sure, but I'm going to go with it. If you'd like to go over there and enjoy coffee in the morning or just relax, there's a footpath at the end of that parking lot that'll take you to that gazebo. And then we have the town public dock right there. Anybody can use the public dock. A lot of people like to go into the village for lunch or cocktail or do a little shopping. It is free to park there. However, if you park your boat there overnight, you are subject to a $100 fine. But when the fireworks come to town, it's not uncommon to see large boats parked there. People will party on their boat all day long. And then they'll watch the fireworks, and then they'll sleep on their boat. They'll avoid the traffic, and they'll gladly pay the $100 fine because that's the cheapest place you're going to stay in Grand Lake on the 4th of July. Then we have the waterfront restaurant right up there with the umbrellas, the best craft beer and wine list in town, and some great food up there. And then we have our marina right there. But I don't know about you guys. I'm not quite ready to go back yet. So what I like to do at this time is blast out to the middle of the lake. I'll line us up with Mount Baldy, and if anybody wants their picture up in the front of the boat with Mount Baldy in the background, we'll do that. Sound like fun? Just want to do that? All right, that's what we'll do then. So hold on to your hats, because we're going to go faster than we have on this whole tour so far, and we might reach speeds of 15 miles an hour. Anywhere. There's very little rules on the rake. We have no speed limit. We don't do that like counterclockwise thing or anything like that. All right, so what I like to do is start off with the front of the boat. If you guys up front want to stand up there and hand me a camera or a phone, I'm more than happy to take your picture. All right, we're going to take a nice, what's so funny? We're going to take a nice cruise back to the marina. If you guys have any questions about Grand Lake or things to do around here or anything like that, you just holler. The world famous tiki boat. I can almost guarantee you there's alcohol on that boat.
How many boats come out to the wooden boat tour?
We had about 30, I think, this year. Not on Grand Lake. Folks, I'm going that way. Could you go that way, please? Thank you. Yeah, there's no place to get at Shadow Mountain Lake. I think that Trail Ridge Marina is the only place you can get fuel over there. Thank you. Well, you guys have been a great group. Thank you very much. Give me a little bit of time to get us docked and tied up. We'll have you on your way to your next Grand Lake adventure.